A secret $28 million paper trail has frozen the biggest trade of the NBA offseason, and it could keep Kawhi Leonard off the court entirely next season. Not a rumor, not a rebuild, a contract with a tree planting company that no longer exists. Here is exactly where things stand right now. The trade is agreed. It was signed off on the 30th of June. Toronto sends Brandon Ingram, Grady Dick, 2 unprotected first-round picks, a pick swap and 2 second-rounders to Los Angeles. The Clippers send back the man who gave that city the only championship it has ever won. Both sides said yes. Both sides shook hands. And then the league office picked up the phone. Because underneath that trade sits an allegation that has hung over the Clippers for almost a full year. That they used a green banking company called Aspiration to funnel $28 million to Kawhi Leonard, on top of his contract, for a job that former employees say he never actually did. That is called cap circumvention. Every team in the NBA has a hard ceiling on what it can pay its players. Slipping a star extra money through a side company is one of the very few things this league treats as an existential threat. Because the moment one owner can do it, the salary cap stops existing for everybody. The Clippers deny all of it, forcefully. Nothing has been proven, nobody has been punished, and I want that on the record before I say another word. But the investigation is reportedly finished. The findings are sitting with the league right now, and depending on what is inside them, there is a real, legitimate version of this where Kawhi Leonard does not play a single game for anybody next season. And the entire case comes down to a paper trail that ends with one tweet. The trap was set in September of 2021, when Steve Ballmer, the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, put $50 million of his own money into a struggling green startup called Aspiration. Their whole business was planting trees to offset your carbon footprint. Weeks later, Kawhi Leonard signed a 4-year, $176 million extension with the Clippers. Aspiration was then announced as a $300 million sponsor of the team. And in April of 2022, Leonard signed his own separate deal with that same company, $28 million, 4 years, $7 million a year, to market and endorse them. On paper, that reads like ordinary corporate sponsorship. In reality, according to the reporting, it was the start of a paper trail. Because in September of last year, the journalist Pablo Torre published a podcast episode that detonated all of it. Torre said he reviewed thousands of pages of legal documents and interviewed former Aspiration employees. And what those employees told him was that Kawhi's deal was a no-show deal. That the $28 million required no work at all, beyond one single condition, staying with the Clippers. And this is the part that stopped me cold. Torre could not find evidence that Leonard appeared in a single Aspiration advertisement. No commercials, no social posts, nothing. The Athletic later found photographs from a marketing shoot, but no evidence they were ever actually used. There is one public connection, a birthday post from the Clippers in 2023, promising that for every comment and every retweet, Aspiration would plant a tree. That is the campaign. That is what $28 million allegedly bought. And it would have stayed buried, except the company collapsed. Aspiration filed for bankruptcy in March of last year, and bankruptcy opens everything. Every creditor gets listed. Every debt gets published. There is nowhere left to hide a number. Sitting in those filings was a company called KL2 Aspire, listed as a creditor, owed $7 million, one of 4 annual payments of exactly that amount, from a contract signed in 2022. KL2, Kawhi Leonard, number 2. The co-founder of Aspiration, Joe Sandberg, pleaded guilty to defrauding investors and lenders. He was sentenced to 14 years in federal prison. And the NBA did not handle this quietly in-house. They hired Wachtell, Lipton, Rosen, and Katz, one of the most feared corporate law firms in America. You do not hire that firm to rubber stamp a denial. You hire them when you want to know exactly where the money went. Now, in fairness to Los Angeles, their position has not moved an inch. They say they did not funnel money to Kawhi Leonard through Aspiration. They say they were victims of a fraud started by Sandberg. They have cooperated with every stage of this. But then Toronto released a statement, and one sentence inside it changed the entire offseason. The Raptors said the league office informed them that if they completed the trade, they would assume the risk of any outcome of the investigation impacting Kawhi. Read that again. The NBA essentially told the Toronto Raptors, you can have him, but whatever happens to him happens to you. Toronto blinked. They said they would wait. And that single decision is where this stops being a legal story and starts being a human one. Brandon Ingram never signed a deal with Aspiration. Grady Dick never invested $50 million into a tree planting company. But both of them found out in June that they had been traded. They said goodbye to teammates. They started packing. And then everything just stopped. Right now, Ingram and Dick are sitting in Toronto, technically traded, unable to report to Los Angeles. Kawhi Leonard is sitting in Los Angeles, technically traded, unable to report to Toronto. Nobody can work out. Nobody can install a system. Nobody can build chemistry with the teammates they are supposed to have. Ingram is right in the middle of his prime. Dick is a young player who needs reps and needs a defined role. Both are losing an entire offseason with whichever team they are actually meant to be on, and you do not get those months back. There is no version of this where somebody hands them the summer again. And then there is Kawhi. He turned 35 this summer, coming off the highest scoring season of his entire career. Every single week this drags on is a week off. A clock that is already running out on him. Training camp opens in October. 3 careers. Frozen in place. Because of a tree planting company that does not exist anymore. And here is the pressure that almost nobody talks about. Adam Silver does not just work for the Clippers. He works for 30 franchises. And 29 of them have spent this entire offseason watching this. Think about Denver right now, handcuffed in the second apron, unable to keep their own role players. Think about every front office that lost a free agent by $2 million this summer and had to tell their fans they could not afford him. Those owners are watching this case, and they are asking one question. If a team can pay a superstar through a side company and walk away with a fine, then what exactly was the point of the cap? That is the real weight on this decision. Silver is not just ruling on the Clippers. He is telling the other 29 owners whether the rules are actually rules. So here are the 4 ways the NBA ends this, ranked from best case to total catastrophe. Number 4. The league finds no violation. Wachtell Lipton hands over the findings. The league reads them, and the conclusion is that nothing here broke the collective bargaining agreement. The trade clears immediately. Ingram and Dick fly to Los Angeles. Kawhi Leonard is a Raptor within days. And this is more possible than people are giving it credit for. The Clippers have not softened their language once in 11 months. Not once. Organizations under genuine pressure start hedging. They start saying things like, "We look forward to the process. We respect the league's review." The Clippers have done the exact opposite. That is either extraordinary confidence or extraordinary stubbornness. And I lean toward confidence. Number 3. A fine and draft picks. This is what most people covering it closely expect. The league finds circumvention, punishes the franchise, everybody moves on. Under the collective bargaining agreement, the penalties available for circumvention are severe. Heavy fines, and the forfeiture of draft picks. Steve Ballmer is one of the wealthiest owners in professional sports. A fine to him is a rounding error. It means absolutely nothing. Draft picks are different. Draft picks hurt, and they hurt for a decade. But the key thing here is that this outcome never touches Kawhi's playing status. The trade goes through. Toronto barely feels it. Number 2. A suspension. Now we are in dangerous territory. If the league determines that Leonard himself knowingly participated in this, he can be suspended. And reports have suggested Toronto would still complete the trade even if he misses time. Sit with what that actually means. The Raptors have already agreed to send out 2 unprotected first-round picks, 2031 and 2033. Unprotected. No safety net. No top 5 protection. Nothing. That is a decade of your future handed to another franchise for a 35-year-old who might open the season in a suit on the bench. And Toronto is not a team with a decade to waste. Scotty Barnes is entering the window where he has to prove he is a genuine number 1. Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett are on real money. This roster needs to win now, not in 2033. I would still do it. I want to say that clearly. A healthy Kawhi Leonard averaged 27.9 points a game last season. The best scoring year of his entire career at 34 years old. That is a top-tier offensive engine, and Toronto has not had one of those since the day he walked out of the building. But the risk is real, and Toronto has decided to eat it with their eyes open. And then there is number 1. The contract gets voided. If the league concludes that the $28 million was disguised compensation, the most extreme penalty available is voiding the contract itself. And if that contract is void, the Clippers cannot trade him. There is no deal. There is nothing left to complete. Kawhi Leonard, a 2-time Finals Most Valuable Player, a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year, the man who hit the most famous shot in Toronto's history, becomes a 35-year-old free agent in August with almost no cap space left anywhere in the league. League insiders call that the nuclear option. But this league has already proven it will press that button. Go back to the year 2000. The Minnesota Timberwolves and a forward named Joe Smith. Minnesota had a secret side agreement with him. Smith signs cheap short deals now. The team promises him an enormous contract later. Textbook circumvention. And when the league found out, the punishment was brutal. They voided Smith's contract. They fined the franchise millions of dollars. They stripped Minnesota of 5 first-round draft picks. And they suspended the owner, Glenn Taylor, for an entire year. That is the blueprint. The void, the fine, the picks, the owner. Every single piece of that is technically sitting on Adam Silver's desk as an option right now. And that is what makes the silence so loud. Silver has said publicly that he wants this concluded before the season starts. Reports last week suggested the fact-finding is actually complete. The law firm has finished its work, and the league is going through the findings. But even that is not the end of it. Because under the collective bargaining agreement, if the league hands down penalties, the Clippers have the right to challenge them. A challenge means a hearing, and a hearing means more time. There is also a detail that has gone almost completely unnoticed. The investigation reportedly expanded. It is no longer just the Aspiration deal. A second sponsorship arrangement was pulled into the same review, along with other things the Clippers are alleged to have paid for. Investigations do not get bigger when they are finding nothing. October is coming, and right now there is a real chance that when those doors open, Kawhi Leonard walks into a Clippers practice facility to play for a team that has already traded him away. So where do I actually land on all of this? I think the trade happens. I think the likeliest outcome by a wide margin is a fine and draft picks, the deal clears, and Kawhi Leonard is a Raptor before the season tips off. I have thought that for months, and nothing I have read has changed my mind. But I have stopped assuming it is a formality. 11 months of investigation. A second deal dragged into the same review. A law firm you only hire when you already suspect what you are going to find. That is not what nothing looks like. $28 million for a job that nobody can prove he ever did, from a company that does not exist anymore. To see how Toronto's starting 5 actually stacks up the moment this trade clears, watch this breakdown next.